Okay, welcome to the new workplace of the future. Um, Last Wednesday, um, I gave instructions for you to use the rest of the week to finish off the activities for external influences and to begin and finish the activities on the smaller topic of internal influences. You can see it's smaller here since we have product, location, management, resource management and business culture. That's only 5 possible choices of influences when it comes to internal, which is less than what we had when we used PESOL, which had 6. Yes, that was a lot more. Anyway, moving on. Location, page 72 of your textbook. This is a recommended choice since it is a topic which gives you definite subheadings that you can use. You can use a lot of common sense to develop the discussion on these topics, and before you know it, if you throw in an example or two, you will have written 2/3 of a page or more. So looking at visibility, these obviously connect. Some connect with others more strongly than others, but visibility, I mean, that connects, for instance, with cost. It connects to proximity to customers, because to be highly visible and be on the high street costs a lot of money. But some businesses need to do that and are willing to do that because of the nature of their business. The business primarily being a retail business. One of the things you can do when you are writing on this is produce a quick summary table. You could have all these factors going down the left hand side of your table, and across the top you could have different types of industries, be it primary, secondary, tertiary, quaternary, quinary, and then you can even add things like retail as well, since this is an important factor here, especially with visibility. Now obviously cost can come in a number of ways. Again, you might be on the high street, which is going to cost you a lot of money, or you might just simply be in an expensive block of offices because the nature of your business leads you to that sort of environment. I mean, one example you can take is lawyers and accountants and so forth, who more often than not will take prime property in a town. It says something about them as a business, besides the fact that they can afford to do it. So that's cost is obviously a factor. When you're setting up a business, it may be that you can't get in the location that you want to begin with. But later down the track you might be able to move into the high street if that's what you wanted to do. Now the lowest cost obviously is going to occur if you have your business at home, and there are many small businesses that run from home where there are many savings to be had. So that's cost, which, as I said, is linked in with visibility and linked into the proximity to customers. I mean, proximity to customers is important again for retail. It doesn't matter if you're a mining company that you are close to your customer, because if you're a mining company, you'd want to be close to your suppliers, possibly. Maybe a bad example there because they're a primary industry, but more so with a manufacturing industry, I would suggest. A manufacturing industry would want to be close to a supplier. At least any business that needs a lot of inputs from suppliers, that's the one. Now we do know that retailers, need to be relatively close to their suppliers as well. So it's always a balancing act here. The last one, there is proximity to support services. This is especially the case with small businesses who can't afford to have finance and legals in-house, and so it would be handy to have them fairly close to where they are. So those are location factors. Each one of those should be a subheading. Okay, moving on to another major topic here. If you get a question asking about management, I would certainly head straight into this comparison between a traditional organizational structure and a new and emerging organizational structure. It's done a sandcastle image here. I think you can use a triangle. It can be a vertical triangle versus a flat triangle. With the vertical triangle, I would also put a lot of lines through the triangle, which would suggest that there's a lot of layers in there. So, going through some of the key points here, centralized, meaning decision making made by a few people, versus the decentralized decision making all over the organization in the flatter structure. In the more traditional hierarchical structure, a key point there is a third dot point, division of labour, which ties in with the second dot point on the second column here, narrow span of control. What we mean by that is that workers only have a limited amount of responsibility, a narrow function, as it were, in the business, versus the flat business, where you've got multitasking going on, and you've got a wide span of control where people have a lot of responsibility, you know, and look, there's pluses and minuses with that. I mean, a minus could be that with the greater responsibility comes greater stress. However, so you may be beginning to see here that the hierarchical traditional structure is more suited to manufacturing businesses, whereas the more fluid structure is more suitable to service industries. So it makes a point here, hierarchical, which I've mentioned that word, but meaning multi-layers. That means communication could be slow going from top to bottom in that particular organization. And that ties in with being an autocratic, didactic management style. Decisions come in, as it says here, communication top down. So decisions are made at the top and everybody else follows those decisions. And those things come down slowly through lots of layers. Whereas with a flat structure, you have the opposite. It's democratic, laissez-faire, management styles, communication says by consensus. I think communication two ways is a better way of doing it. You could draw a flat triangle with an arrow pointing down and up, whereas your hierarchical triangle, you would have an arrow just pointing down. Here, wide span of control. Here, a narrow span of control. So those are the key points. I know the slide does have other points on there, but those are, for me, the key points to get out of this one. Okay, elements of a business culture. You may well research some other information. I think this is a very broad topic, but the textbook focuses on 4 elements. One is values. Honesty, hard work, teamwork, quality customer service, employee participation and innovation. These are all values that many businesses would like to have. Symbols, these are events or objects that are used to represent something that the business believes to be important. Rituals, rites and celebrations, that might just be having a beer after work on a Friday. I mean, the way that people do business in one organization to another is very, very different. Even in a school situation, you, as a teacher, I can assure you, I've moved from one school to another school, and totally different cultures, and it's very difficult to to adjust to the new cultures. That's why, by the way, we need induction. Induction is something which we'll be looking at in human resources, but that's where the business tries to immerse you in the culture of the business. Okay, last point there, heroes, successful employees who reflect its values, act as an example for others. Well, essentially, management must model the values. I mean, we see often Nelson File, when he's in the doing a speech in any given assembly, he will often use the principles that this school runs by, you know, global citizens and service to others and so forth. And he'll repeat that often. He's modeling the values. Okay, I'm loath to show you this next slide because, as I think I've already mentioned, a business life cycle is no longer in the syllabus. But I do think it's worth you having a brief look at this, even if it's only to distinguish it from a product life cycle, because they are very similar. They have different stages with different challenges and things and opportunities. Establishment, growth, maturity, and decline. It's very similar to the product life cycle. That last heading, decline, there doesn't always have to be a decline. It can be a renewal. So this is again a diagram that you could use, just as we had that diagram for the product life cycle. Here you can see the renewal. A business doesn't have to just go and decline in its what's known as the post-maturity stage. So there are a number of points there, characteristics of each stage. I don't think you have to remember all those these days in any great detail, but I do think just being familiar with the concept, knowing that it's there. One of the things that I think is useful to know is the terminology that goes with the growth of a business. I mean, a business can grow in different ways, and growth, as we know from finance, can be a major objective of the business. So in looking at this integrates with our finance topic, and you may be answering a finance question and you can pop a little bit of this in. You may have a question which has got finance and operations in it, and these things link together. So in this example, you've got a bakery. Horizontal integration is the terminology given to buying a similar business, whereas if you have forward vertical integration, that's going along the line of supply, as it were, to selling the product that you've just made, and then you've got backward vertical integration, where they would buy the farm that produces the wheat to make the bread. McDonald's do this very well in terms of controlling the whole supply chain. Advantages are obviously saving cost. This one here in the top left is diversification, otherwise known as conglomerate integration. That's not a term that's in your syllabus, so I wouldn't get too concerned about that. Diversification is good enough. Here they've got a complete diversification into fine furniture factory, but I think it would be okay for you to give an example of a complementary business that is different to the core business, but nevertheless complements it. Reason for diversification is to ensure that, especially with seasonal businesses, that you can have sources of income even when it's quiet, a quiet time with your core business. Again, that ties in with finance. Moving along, there are definitions there. Here you've got a merger and an acquisition defined. A merger when they combine, an acquisition when you have a takeover. Sometimes that can be a hostile takeover if it's a public company. Hostile meaning they don't want to be taken over. Anyway, these are very difficult things to deliver. I remember working for an agency where the owners were very good financially. They ran a tight ship and made a profit. whereas they didn't have, though, a real good creative reputation. And that's what they hungered for. It was a personal goal of the owners to be recognised for creativity. So what they did, they merged with a creative agency that had many awards for its advertising, but struggled to make a profit. Well, when the two emerged, you would have thought it would have been a marriage made in heaven, but unfortunately the two cultures, so this is why this ties in with the previous topic of cultures, business cultures, the two cultures just couldn't work together and the business ended up going bankrupt. Okay, just to finish off with, you've got some examples here of exam questions, and this is information from past exam papers. And that's it, folks. So that's the end of that PowerPoint. I'll be in touch with further instructions as we now enter into this lovely new age that we have ahead of us. Bye.